What does the Oscar-winning film Parasite, the hit K-pop group IZ*ONE, and Back to the Future, the musical, all have in common? They are all created through CJ Entertainment. CJ Entertainment is a Korean production company whose history gets a little muddy. We know that it started in 1995 when the South Korean company Shaojidang, or better known as the CJ Group, invested in an upstart company known as Dreamworks Entertainment. As their second largest investor came a deal that the CJ Group would help distribute DreamWorks film into South Korea. And now we get into the muddy area. We know that after landing a deal with a Korean film, the CJ Group decided that they wanted to start producing their own Korean content. And somewhere between 2000 and 2002, they rebranded and created CJ Entertainment, specifically creating content for Koreans in Korea. They didn't want to just push out DreamWorks films, but have a spot where Korean filmmakers could go and create their own films, get funding, everything that they needed. Thankfully for the group, this idea really took off, and the Korean entertainment really grew. Now, they remain investors in DreamWorks for a while, up until 2007, in which that deal changed to a deal with Universal, which lasted until 2015. But to put it plainly, once the CJ Group swapped over to just making Korean entertainment, they grew, and they just kept growing. CJ Entertainment is now one of South Korea's biggest production companies, making movies, shows, production art pieces, animations, music. It even has its own streaming service and TV channels. By covering production in such a wide area, they're able to cover everything media related, such as with their movies. They cover all types of genres, such as reality, competition, travel, drama, romance, action, sci-fi, comedy. If you can think it, they do it. And the same goes for all those other categories as well. But let's back it up and go back to that streaming network, because that's where it actually gets a little more interesting. See, it's not that uncommon for production companies such as Paramount to have their own dedicated streaming platforms like Paramount Plus. But CJ Entertainment actually has a lot more than just their streaming platforms that they cover. See, remember how the CJ Group originally invested in DreamWorks? Well, they didn't go anywhere. They themselves grew and grew just as much as CJ Entertainment did. If anything, more, much more. The CJ Group is a massive company which has smaller branches such as CJ Entertainment covering media, but also CJ Golden Village, which is a line of cinemas, CJ Logistics, which is a shipping company, CJ Food, which is a food supply company, and CJ Newsroom, which, as you guessed, is a news company. They even have CJ Internet, an internet provider. And these are only a few of their branch companies. They have a lot more. So in case you're not starting to realize what CJ Entertainment is, here's a hint. And if you're not convinced, just sit back because it's fixing to go even deeper. Now, besides producing such a wide array of content and having its own streaming service, CJ Entertainment, of course, covers all the traditional aspects of producers, such as funding, distribution, and exhibition, which by having their own TV channels and a line of cinemas makes that distribution very easy. And by having their own streaming services and internet provider, well, that makes it easy too. And by having those same TV channels and food products and streaming services, all those advertisements suddenly become a lot easier as well. So I'm not going to beat around the bush here. Yes, CJ Entertainment is a giant monopoly.
Hey, Editing Bo here. So I know I just referred to them as a monopoly, and in my opinion that's true, but legally the company is what's known as an oligopoly, which means that they still have competition because there are some other production companies that still exist in South Korea. But the reason I'm going to keep referring to them as a monopoly is because none of those other companies compare to the amount of power or influence that CJ Entertainment hold. But again, technically an oligopoly, but I'm gonna say monopoly. Okay, back to the video.
But honestly, it gets even stranger when you start looking at the other producers in South Korea. If you look at the screen right now, you're gonna be seeing a very long list of other South Korean production companies. And the kicker is that every single one of these production companies are actually all owned by CJ Entertainment. It's easier to understand when you think of CJ Entertainment as Disney and all these other companies as Pixar. They're connected, but still sort of their own thing. Only in this case, Pixar doesn't just do animation, it does a wide array of media content, and there's tons and tons of Pixars. But unlike Pixar, these companies are put in a sort of gray area where they aren't openly connected to CJ Entertainment unless you do some digging, which the average consumer probably is not going to worry about. And if you can't infer it yourself, CJ Entertainment is doing this so that it looks like all these things that they're producing, all these other producers are doing as well, where they're quite literally making their own rivals, and their rivals are themselves. Honestly, since all of these are connected to CJ Entertainment, I could go into what every single one of these companies do, but for my sanity and for the people watching this video, just know that each one of these companies do basically exactly what CJ Entertainment does, just on a slightly smaller scale. They still have their own streaming shows, TV shows, films that they produce, music that they do, even their own newsrooms. And a few of them have specialty areas where they focus on just animation or just a certain type of film. Honestly, when I started research for this project, I was just gonna cover the company history and what they produce. But after learning what CJ Entertainment is, a giant media monopoly, which I'll remind you is owned by just another giant monopoly in South Korea, it's really hard to really get into everything that they do, but hopefully you've been able to understand it at least a little bit. I don't mean to imply with this that South Korea is inherently bad compared to the US, but I will say that I am at least glad that we don't have any giant media monopolies here in America. It's great that we have some laws making sure that that doesn't happen.